What's up, guys? Welcome back to another Transformers video here today. And today we're just going to be kind of talking about Rise of the Beasts a couple months later, because it has already been pretty much a couple months past when Rise of the Beast came out. Rise of the Beast came out, for me, I saw it on June 7th, and right now we are just about a day away from September. So time has been flying, and Rise of the Beasts is pretty much done in theaters. It might be in some places around the world right now, but it's pretty much gonna top out at around 440 million in the box office, which is unfortunately a loss. The movie needed 500 million to just break even. If you ask me where I get my math on that, it is pretty common knowledge that for a movie to break even and then make a profit, all you have to do to figure out if it breaks even is you take the budget and times it by 2.5, because it needs to double the budget, and then the 0.5 to take into account with all the marketing and advertising and stuff like that. So Rise of the Beasts fell about $60 million short of even breaking even, which obviously is a bit of a bad thing, considering Rise of the Beasts is also the lowest grossing Transformers movie. And that honestly does surprise me, as even the Bumblebee movie, which was coming off by far the worst Transformers movie the last night, it was coming off that massive disappointment, both box office wise, with The Last Knight really kind of falling off a cliff from its predecessors, and then Bumblebee movie kind of being in the middle of like, is this a reboot? Is this a continuation? What is this? And Bumblebee movie ended up making around 450 million. So it did even make a little bit more than Rise of the Beasts, with over $100 million less in its budget. So I'm saying all of this to kind of say, why did Rise of the Beasts not do that well? And I do apologize to a lot of people who like Rise of the Beasts and love Rise of the Beasts. I'm going to say it now. I'm going to say this once. I know I say this so many times. I liked the movie overall, but there was a lot that I was extremely disappointed with. So I'm going to be very critical in this video, and I'm just going to kind of break down why I think Rise of the Beasts kind of was a disappointment. And you may be hearing that and saying, that's absolutely ridiculous. I loved Rise of the Beasts. I know a lot of other people that loved it. And yes, while it may be true that a lot of OG, like G1 prime, dominant fans really liked Rise of the Beasts, the reality was the things that they like about the movie are a lot more of the superficial things, like the designs or some of the mannerisms, or some of the things that really are more surface level comparative to the criticisms and flaws of previous movies. And I'm just going to get this out of the way first, because this is the biggest thing I think is noteworthy. The writer of this movie was Joby Harold. And if you don't recognize the name Joby Harold, he is the man who made, in my opinion, and in many people's opinions, by far the worst Disney Star Wars product to be released to date. And you may be thinking, well, that's the sequel movies. No, the sequel movies were bad, but the worst thing, in my opinion, and a lot of people's opinions, that Disney has done was released in the last couple years, being the Kenobi show. And obviously I don't make a lot of Star Wars content, but I'm going to give you the briefest summary I can to kind of put you in perspective if you're not a Star Wars fan. The Kenobi show was brought about, and it was originally supposed to be a movie. It was originally supposed to be a trilogy, and then they changed it to a show. And instead of reworking a movie or trying to figure out a better story for a show, which is much longer than a movie, they shrunk down a movie script into a show. And Joby Harold came in, and he just butchered what was arguably could have been a very cool script. Now, he was not the person that wrote the original movie script. He adapted this movie script and changed it and did his little spin on it and formed the Kenobi show. And the show he formed was I'm trying to be nice in describing it, but it was an abomination. It was disgustingly bad. They brought back Ewan McGregor, who was the actor for Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Hayden Christensen, the amazing actor for Anakin Skywalker, and did jack shit with them. Obi-Wan was sidelined in his own show in favor of a new character named Reva, who came in and hijacked the plot. A stupid character. Then we have young child Leia, which completely goes against the canon of Star Wars. And I could rant, honestly, for hours about this, but truly, I started making Transformers content because I actually have positivity in the Transformers brand, whereas Star Wars right now, it's very hard to say something nice. I'm liking the Ahsoka show so far, but the sequels were dog-ass. The Kenobi show was an abomination. Boba Fett was a complete disappointment, and Andor was boring as all hell, and nobody watched it. That's just the reality of it. And so Joby Harold, I had negative notions about him before even I didn't even know for a while that he was the writer for Transformers Rise of the Beasts. And when I found that out, I was like, oh dear God, I'm gonna give him a chance, but I don't have high expectations for him. And sure enough, my opinion, the weakest part of Rise of the Beasts is by far, by a country mile, the story. It is a very, very, very generic, simple story. There's a MacGuffin. They have to get a MacGuffin, and they have to stop the big bad guy. And that is the entire story. There's not much complexity at all to it. And honestly, like, I've kind of been biting my tongue the last few weeks because although, like I said, I didn't dislike the movie. I thought it was cool. It was all right, but it didn't blow me away. And even coming out of it, I was like, this is not better than a few of the Bay movies. And you may hear that and be like, that's ridiculous. The Bay movies were awful. And I have to say to you, honestly, at this point, you need to grow up and you need to get over it. Because Optimus Prime is not the exact same character in every media. Bayverse Prime is not G1 Prime. And the biggest problems people have with Bayverse Prime is the way he acts. But if you are actually going to go and watch those movies and you take into account the things this character has been through, all of his actions are damn near justifiable. And it's really ridiculous the lengths people will go to complain about the Bayverse movies, and then they will just see Rise of the Beast and completely excuse the lackluster story, the lack of character development, and the way that the plot is just sped through like it's The Flash. The Maximals get hardly any character development. Primal is the only Maximal. Primal and Airraiser are the only Maximals that have any prominence in the movie, and even that, Airraiser is literally just there to provide exposition nonstop. You don't even see her transform. It's like, what are we doing here? Rhinox says not a single word in the movie, and they even had a joke about it, which they cut out. And I also want to make a point here to say I do not blame Stephen Caple Jr. in the slightest, because if you watch my video, and I'll put a link to it here, if you watched my video and saw all of the stuff that got cut out of this movie, that Caple himself wanted to have in, you would know, like, what is going on. And at the same time, I'm not putting all the blame on Joby Harold for his boring ass story, but I'm putting a lot of the blame on the producers, specifically Lorenzo Di Belventura, whatever the fuck his last name is. He's the guy that keeps trying to insist this is still in the Bayverse, this can connect to the Bayverse. He's the one that refuses to let Caple go off and make this his own thing. And like I said, I'm not putting the blame on Caple because I watched a bunch of his interviews. I watched him talk about Transformers. It is very clear he is a fan and he wants to do all of the cool stuff we want to see, but they didn't let him keep it in the movie, or they didn't let him put it in the movie. And it's just a combination of factors that all comes together and makes Rise of the Beasts really just disappointing when you look at it from an objective face. And whether or not you agree with me on that, the numbers agree. I mean, the numbers back up what I'm saying. It didn't generate interest, and a lot of people are saying, oh, well, that's because of the fact it was released in between a bunch of other good movies like Spider-Verse and that stuff. Well, no, that's ridiculous, because you had Oppenheimer, Barbie, Spider-Verse, all of these movies releasing around the same time of other movies, and they were still able to find success, especially considering, and people are also saying, oh, it's because of the writer's strike. No, I mean, that's not an excuse. And people are like, oh, we're still coming out of the pandemic. Again, not an excuse. Multiverse of Madness made $1 billion during the pandemic. No Way Home made $1 billion during the pandemic. Top Gun Maverick made $1 billion during the pandemic. So there's really no excuse for why this movie didn't do well, other than the fact that it didn't generate interest. And I think that's a combination of factors between the producers not differentiating this as a reboot, the shortened runtime, the fast-paced plot, and I think a lot of people, there is a large silent majority that truly love the Bayverse movies, and those designs are ingrained in people's heads. And people forget, although I really like the Rise of the Beast Optimus design, it's pretty arguably, I could say it's my favorite Optimus design, but a lot of people really didn't like the design, and that goes into the notion of how people have brought up in the past that the G1 designs do not translate to live action. They are too cartoony, though they're not realistic. You cannot have the G1 designs in live action. Now, obviously, you can have variations of it, like Mirage having a very similar Porsche to Jazz's Porsche in G1, and that can make sense, but Optimus's design, a lot of people had issues with it. I mean, let's be honest here. Who remembers when that first teaser trailer dropped and everyone was saying Optimus looks awful? His proportions are off, his body looks off. People had complaints about that. And just because a lot of us warmed up to it as promotion went on, doesn't mean that everyone did. There's a lot of people that still were put off by the visuals of this movie. And again, I feel like I'm playing both sides of the fence here, because I'm honestly pretty neutral on this. I liked a lot of the movie and I disliked a lot of the movie. I'm honestly rather neutral on it. But I feel like this is a dialogue that we Transformers fans need to have, and it needs to be a civil dialogue to prevent us from becoming like the Marvel fans, like the Star Wars fans, where the word toxic is just thrown around nonstop when people have differing opinions. It is okay to disagree with every word I'm saying. It is okay to agree with every word I'm saying. It is okay to like and love whatever you want to like and love. And I've debated making another video on this, but I'm honestly just going to put my message in right here. It is okay to like something and that thing be objectively bad content. For example, it is okay if you love the Star Wars sequels movies, but those are objectively bad movies. I mean, look at the fan reaction. Look at the state of the brand after those movies. Look at the financial failures following the reception to those movies. Now, I'll give you another example, and I'm going to piss a lot of people off. The majority of Michael Bay's Transformers movies are objectively bad movies, and I honestly like all of them except for The Last Knight. Yes, I'll say it here. I liked Age of Extinction, and I've rewatched that one a good amount of times, and honestly, I could say I like it more with each rewatch. And the designs are great, the banter is great, the plot is fine. I really think Mark Wahlberg gets a shit ton of hate for no reason. Obviously, there's some bullshit moments in the movie, like the whole Romeo and Juliet stuff. Like, that's really weird, and Michael Bay putting some weird stuff in there. But overall, the movie, I like the movie. Transformers Dark of the Moon is my favorite movie. That will not change. Transformers 2007 is great. And Revenge of the Fallen, I think, is overhated as well. But at the end of the day, other than Transformers 2007, you could really make an argument that the rest of them are just bad movies. I mean, from a plot point of view, from a character development point of view, all of that stuff, I'm not going to sit down and argue with people and say, no, these are good movies. Like, the majority of people who are not fans look at them as bad movies, and I'm okay with that. I love movies that are considered bad. But in today's day and age, it's like people cannot wrap their head around the idea that you can like something and it doesn't mean it's good. And that is just something I wanted to get out there as a message, because I've noticed a lot of fans in the Transformers community, and I have a very small channel. I only started making videos about this within the last year, but I thank all of you guys who have chosen to subscribe and like my videos. But I've had some decent interactions in comment sections and in my community tab, so I like to think I'm coming from a perspective where I can actually give my take on the fans' opinions, because I see your guys' opinions all the time when I'm asking for them, when we're having dialogues and stuff, and I really am starting to see, and thankfully it's nowhere near as large as these other brands like Marvel and Star Wars, but there's a lot of people who are simply intolerant of other people's opinions from the jump. Rise of the Beast was a great movie, and if you don't think that, you're not a real fan. That's the problem. We need to not be doing that and just having more dialogues. Why didn't you like the movie? Why did you like the movie? What would you have liked to see differently? These types of questions. And that's pretty much just the message I wanted to get out here today. Overall, There's a lot of dialogue swirling about Rise of the Beast and the future for Transformers. My opinion, I think we're going to be fine because the main selling point of the movies is the movies are pretty much just advertisements for the toys. The toys have been popping off for almost 50 years now, so I think we're going to be fine in terms of getting more. The question is going to be, though, will they continue the reboot story, or will they try to keep trying to work this into the bayverse? And personally, I would love for them to keep going reboot, but who knows? Is the studio going to look at the lack of success and say, damn, this was the worst performing one, period? Even though we thought Michael Bay's stuff was bad towards the end, he still made over 200 million more than this. So what are we going to do? And I guess we're just going to have to wait and find out. And you can be damn sure I'm going to be covering all of that content when it comes around. So to end this video off on somewhat of a positive note, we still have a lot to be hopeful for. Transformers 1, the animated movie, is coming out September of next year. It is a prequel to Rise of the Beast. If you want to know more about that, I have a video made about that. Just a couple videos down. Check that out on my channel. I'll link it below. And we also have Transformers Reactivate, which looks like a fantastic video game, which is coming out later this year. It's going to be not necessarily open world, but pretty much open world with the size of the maps and areas you're going to be able to explore and conquering enemies, bringing them to your team. A bunch of cool stuff. You could play as a bunch of Transformers. So although this video was pretty negative about the movie itself, there's still a lot to be looking forward to as Transformers fans, and hopefully we can all experience that together. So without anything else I have to add here today, please let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and let's please try to keep it civil. We're not looking for arguments here, just helpful conversations and productive conversations. We'll see what we could do. But likes, dislikes, anything is appreciated, and until next time, guys, peace.